Greetings to the Childers family from Ocracoke Island on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I really wish that I could be with you today, but other events are keeping me here. I'm Andrea Rhodarmer Cody, and I'm one of the 18 grandchildren of Joe and Connie Childers. I'm sure a lot of my first cousins are there. I'm pretty sure that both my sister and brother are there, but I'm also sure there are others there that I'm not acquainted with. So you can figure out where I fit on the Childers family tree. Some of you also know my husband, Ed, and he was going to be here. And I was going to have him just kind of peek in here and say hello. But as the time panned out here, he's actually on a fishing trip. He's probably in the Gulf Stream right now fishing with some friends who are visiting with us. So I'll just say hello for him. We both really wish that we were there. I do want to thank Steve and especially Ronnie and Barbara and anybody else who put forth some effort to make this happen. We've been talking about this for years, and I'm just thrilled that it's happening. I do wish that I were there and could be with you, but I'm really just thrilled that it's happening. It's way past time for this to happen, and I hope that we'll be able to find a time for it to happen again at some kind of a regular interval. I think this is great. Even though I'm not there, I do want to contribute something to the gathering, and it's a story that I put down a few years ago on paper, and it's about a couple of our people, and I think it's a good example of maybe the kind of characters that we come from. I do think it'll be entertaining for you, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm going to read it aloud for you here, and at the end of the story, there's a couple of author's notes that I've added. So when the story's over, I'll just pause for a few moments, and then I'll add those on too at the end. So just sit back and relax for a few moments. The story's not very long, and I'll share this with you. And bear with me. Obviously, I don't do this for a living, but there may be a little shuffling of paper and so forth. But we'll do this. This story is titled Two Sisters. The sisters were known all around as good cooks. This is one reputation that is always good to have. It can make up for many other shortcomings and even a few outright flaws. Even if you're not all that popular, it provides motivation for folks to avoid putting you on their list of enemies. If you want good attendance at your backyard get-togethers, barbecues, holiday celebrations, and any general potluck gatherings, you need to be at least above average to good friends with the known culinary talents in your circle. Hospitality experts and idiots alike know that good food is essential to successful social events. Well, all this commentary is simply to establish that the sisters were both generally well-liked and on good terms with all in their world. In fact, neither of the girls had any particularly outstanding or noticeable shortcoming or flaw that needed to be balanced out. So they fully enjoyed all the benefits of their much appreciated appetite-appeasing contributions to the community. And it's because of their ways with food that this story even exists. One specific dish is central to the series of events, and it's because this dish was so preferred by so many that the story has been kept alive and retold and taken on a life of its own over the years. The sisters came into their gifting honestly and naturally. It was inherited from their mother, and then enhanced as they each observed, imitated, and finally adopted her intuitive ways with ingredients. They both cooked with recipes, but were notorious for veering off and making their own adjustments, often substituting ingredients on hand for those that weren't on the shelf. Sometimes a dish that had been enjoyed many times would appear on the dinner table to eager appetites, only to surprise the diners and make them wonder what had happened this time. The girls also took on their mother's joking nature at these times and feigned innocence at making any change in the beloved recipe. When challenged, each would insist that nothing was different and that, in fact, something must be wrong with all your tasters. Well, when this line was uttered, everyone just seemed to know that they were indeed correct and that the next step was to commence a guessing game to finally get the cook to fess up to which ingredient or ingredients had been omitted and or added. Of course, much tasting had to ensue for the participants to make their guesses, so the meal would typically be almost over by the time the mystery was solved. The person who identified the changed ingredient generally felt they had earned a feather in their cap for their distinguishing palate, and everyone present at the meal came away as thoroughly entertained as they were nourished. You see, like their mother, both girls naturally understood that food does more than simply fill the stomach. It engages the senses and stimulates the mind. It brings people together and weaves a social fabric like nothing else can. It provides space and time for communication and relationship that nothing else can replicate. Of course, these are all on the positive side of the effects of good food. Like many things in life, there is also a dark side to food preparation. It can be used to play tricks on people. It can create competitive rivalries. Some cooks manipulate relationships by only dishing up the best when they get what they want first. Any cook can use mealtime to his or her advantage by choosing to announce bad news or an unpopular decision over a favorite meal in hopes of avoiding or at least minimizing the reaction with a comment such as, "Let's not get upset about it now. Let's enjoy this good meal and talk about this later." The sisters were both already good cooks in their own rights by the time they were teenagers. The older sister had a steady boyfriend who was partial to desserts, especially pies. So she liked to have a delicious homemade pie on hand for the two of them to enjoy after an evening date. She did not miss a chance to impress him in this way. The younger sister was not yet dating, but she was a particularly good pie chef. One of her best was a lemon meringue. It wasn't just the fresh lemon juice and the balance of sweet and tangy flavors she achieved in the filling that won her a reputation, though these were often cited as her special touch. The crowning glory of her pies was the beautiful meringue that topped each one. She was a master at whipping the egg whites to a stiff, deep layer with perfect sharp peaks that browned in the oven and sloped to little valleys that remained white. It must be noted that this indeed is a talent and also a skill that must be practiced and repeated to get reliable results on a consistent basis. The younger sister had done just that. Now, it isn't just the appearance of the meringue that makes it so wonderful. It is also the texture that adds so much to the experience of eating such a treat. The browning of the peaks and the white of the valleys ensure that the meringue will have a slightly tough skin, but a soft and somewhat spongy interior, giving a wonderful contrast to the creamy lemon filling that it tops. Well, back to our story. Two factors intersected on the particular day of the story. First, the younger daughter had already been assigned the task of whipping up 2 of her beloved lemon meringue pies by her mother. One was to be for the family's dessert that evening after supper. The other one was to be prepared and put aside for the older daughter and her date to enjoy later that night. This was not unusual. In a household at that time with a total of 7 children, any task assigned was to be done efficiently and for the benefit of as many family members as it applied to. If you were told to wash the dishes that day, you washed dishes as many times as necessary to keep up with the use of them throughout the day. If you were assigned laundry, you did everyone's laundry. And if you were asked or told to make dessert for supper and for your sister's date, you made it. So the simple fact that the younger daughter was asked or told to prepare a second lemon meringue pie that day was not in any way, shape, or form a contributing factor to what she did. No, this was simply life, something she had done before and would do again, not only for this sister, but for the other siblings as well. This factor was a very common part of everyday life, and on its own doesn't constitute a reason for the younger daughter to do what she did. But she did it. And the second factor was the motivation for the deed. But it isn't at all clear exactly what that was. All that can be said is this: the older sister did or said something to make the younger one very mad. Anger between siblings is common enough, but this was beyond common, whatever it was. Normal revenge between sisters can certainly get out of proportion, but this went further and caused the younger sister to premeditate her revenge and carry it out without a flaw. There was no doubt what was done or who did it. The younger sister definitely did it. Why is still a mystery. Well, both pies were prepared and baked as usual. But when she removed them from the oven, the younger sister carefully put one away in the pie safe for the other sister and her date. She knew which pie to put away and which to leave out for the family supper. The first lemon meringue pie was heartily enjoyed by the family, except for the older sister, who was waiting to have her pie later on with her sweetheart. She kept mentioning her date and talking about how he was going to love that pie later on that night. The younger sister just kept quiet. The date showed up on time to pick up the older sister, and all seemed to be as usual. Chores were finished, and the rest of the family turned in for the night. The front porch light and a light in the kitchen were left burning for the return of the sweethearts. When they returned, they went straight to the kitchen to cut large slices of the pie. The older sister got out plates and forks and a knife to cut the pie. As her date rubbed his hands together in anticipation of the beloved dessert, she went to the pie safe and opened the door. There was the pie. She reached in and brought it out. But to her horror and humiliation, the pie held a message for her. There was no possibility of hiding it from her date. It was intended to embarrass her, and it did. For in the beautiful meringue that browned perfectly on the top peaks and had smooth white valleys was written a 4-letter word. As she gasped, her date laughed out loud and could not stop laughing. But humor was not what she felt. She was furious and started yelling her sister's name. Well, the date tried to quiet her down and said they should just laugh it off and eat their pie. But he could not quite contain his laughter as he spoke, which made the sister madder. She kept up a racket until her parents finally got up from bed to see what was going on. "Look what she did! Just look what she did!" She held out the pie for them to see. She knew they would exact a just punishment for such a wrong. But the reaction wasn't what she hoped for. They squinted at the pie for a moment and then looked at each other, and laughter erupted from both of them. And of course, then the date joined right in with them. Well, the poor sister had no one to sympathize with her. She had to endure her humiliation alone. After the parents got some control over their laughter, they headed off back to bed. But as they went, the father turned and said, "Well, you young folks enjoy your pie." And they snorted out around giggling as they left, which also started the date on his own giggles yet again. Well, there was nothing left to do but cut the pie, so she did. And the date enjoyed it as much as any pie the younger sister had ever made for them. But did the older sister enjoy hers? It is not known to this day whether she even ate a piece. And what exactly did the younger sister write in that meringue to make her sister so mad? Well, here it is. S-H-I-T. And that is the story of my own sweet mama's most delicious and infamous lemon meringue shit pie. I hope you enjoyed the story. Well, let me share my author's note with you too to finish it up. Well, this story actually did happen. It's a true story. My mother was the one who baked the pie for my aunt and her date. Through the years, we have often retold the story and shared lots of laughs over it. Neither my mom nor my aunt ever remembered what the fuss was about. And the pie didn't do any long-term damage. That date married my aunt, and they had over 60 happy years together. After Mama passed away, we shared this story with the pastor who spoke at her memorial service. He loved it so much, he wanted to somehow include it in the service in his comments. Well, he found a way. He spoke of what a wonderful cook she was and how her desserts were especially delicious. And then he mentioned that she was known for the meringues of her pies, which had a near-perfect consistency that could have allowed one to write with their finger in it. There were a few gasps and hiccups heard across the crowd by the ones who remembered and the ones who knew. But he left it at that. He didn't take it any further. And for those who may not know by now, my mother is Rubena Childers Silver. And her older sister, the other one in this story, is Martha Childers Stiles. And they are better known as Mart and Beaner. So that's the pie story. If you've never heard it before, then you really have to know this one. So I'm glad you got to hear it. Enjoy. Again, I wish that I were there with you. I wish I were there to hear some of the other stories that you're sharing that you remember. Goodness, if you feel like it, or maybe you just get a bug in your ear, write some of them down. Let's remember these characters that we all remember, and we come from some really great people. We're very blessed in this family. So enjoy. I love you all. I'm glad to be in this line. Have fun.